Is set up. Okay. So I'm glad to see all of you this morning. Those of you who are not still in your pajamas or underwear, you're welcome to turn on your cameras. And if that's not practical, we understand that you're still in your pajamas. Okay. Today's topic is kind of interesting. So we'll turn to 10th canto, and we'll begin with prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. In just one moment, you have to get something. Very interesting story. Okay, so we shall begin. This is a story of Muchi Kunda. Now, to give some context here, as a devotee, we tend to work very hard. I cannot remember in the last half a century a boring day. And sometimes, just the nature of devotional service, there's always something to do, and there's always an intensity of activities. There's Krishna, Prabhupada set up a very clever system. He knew that if we weren't engaged, we would just contemplate our senses. So we're always busy in devotional service, be it reading, chanting, whatever we have to do. And sometimes it gets tired. We get tired. And we get so tired from the intensity of service that the slogan that always bewildered me my whole life becomes a little bit understandable. Now, what do we say when someone dies at their funeral? What's the most common saying we have? Somebody want to unmute and say?
Sorry for your loss.
Well, that's one. But
rest in peace.
What's that?
Rest in peace, Prabhu.
Rest in peace.
Safe journey.
Rest in peace. And sometimes I think about that. My gosh, work so hard. Now rest in peace kind of makes sense. You just gotta rest a little bit. Now, of course, the modern coffins make that very practical. They're lined with silk and soft padding and a pillow so the corpse can be comfortable. As absurd as that is, that's what people do. And the funeral homes make a fortune, often trying to convince you that you would never put your relative in a pine box. You have to put him in a mahogany. Who would be comfortable in a pine box? Which is why we cremate. Anyway, Muchi Kunda had worked so hard fighting for the demigods. When finally someone else came to take that post, he wanted to rest in peace, but while still alive. So he was given the benediction that he could sleep for a long, long time. And if anybody would disturb his sleep, when he looked at that person, their whole body would get on fire. It's not like he was Superman with some kind of heat vision, but rather when he looked at them, their own internal body would just burst into flames from the energy within their body. So Muchi Kunda wanted to, as we say, rest in peace, and then he got disturbed. And a lot of interesting things happened with that. Who was Muchi Kunda? I'm describing he was an agent of the demigods, but he was very devoted to Brahminical culture, and eventually Kartikeya took the job as protector, but he had protected for a long, long time. And so we're going to look at these verses, and we're going to look at a theme of time. So the verses we're looking at, let me see if I got this right here, just to make sure. It's more than one verse. We have, see, yes, 7 to 9. That's what I thought. So, hasta pratam ivatmanam harinasa pade pade nito darsyata duram yavanesho dri kandaram. Appearing virtually within reach of Kalvina's hands at every moment, Lord Hari led the king of the Yavanas far away to a mountain cave. Now, Kalviyana was kind of an evil person. He was described in the Sanskrit as Malecha, meaning he wasn't exactly vegetarian. And he had appeared on the battlefield the same time as Jarasandha. So now Krishna is facing two enemies. This is the 18th time Jarasandha is attacking him, and he has two armies coming after him. Kalyavana was quite a ferocious, powerful creature. So what did Lord Krishna do? He ran away. And he always stayed one step in front of Kalyavana, so that Kalyavana can never catch him. Can somebody tell me another story where somebody couldn't catch Krishna?
Mother Yashoda.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Damodar Priya, nice to see you. Very nice. Yes, the story we have of the pastime of Damodar Astika. So Krishna can only be caught, we know, Bhakti Mam Abhijanate, can only be captured by devotional service. So, and this was very frustrating to Kalyavana. He's running and they can't catch him. And so, appearing virtually within reach of Kalyavana's hands at every moment, Lord Hari led the king of the Yavanas far away to a mountain cave. While chasing the Lord, the Yavana cast insults at him, saying, "You took birth in the Yadu dynasty. It's not proper for you to run." But still, Kalyavana could not reach Lord Krishna because its sinful reactions have not been cleansed away. Although insulted in this way, the Supreme Lord entered the mountain cave. Kalyavana also entered, and there he saw another man sleeping. Now, he said, "This is strange. I'm chasing Lord Krishna." He runs into a cave, and then he lies down to take a nap. This is weird. That's what he was thinking, at least. And the purport is very interesting in this verse. The Lord exhibits his opulence of renunciation, determined to execute his plan, and Lord Krishna had a plan, and give blessings to Muchi Kunda, which was the intent. The Lord ignored the insults and calmly proceeded with his program. How many of you can ignore insults to do your service? Maybe what I can do is I have all your names on my screen, and I know some of you. I could begin by starting with Adi Purusha, and I could say some nasty insults to him. And then I could move on to various devotees and say insults to them. And we'll see how many of you will still be benevolent and carry on with your duty. And of course, it's hard to insult Adi Purusha because he's such a nice guy. So I won't pursue that one. But that's the idea that how many of us can take insults and just say, no, we have our duty. And who cares? Somebody, as a kid, my parents used to teach me, sticks and stones can break your bones, but names can never hurt you, or some saying like that. So Lord Krishna obviously had a mission. Ego didn't count. It's the Lord himself. So he said, oh, he didn't care. And he goes into the cave, and Lord Krishna disappears. And this person is sleeping there, and Kalyavana thinks, oh, that's Lord Krishna. And what does he do? He goes up and kicks him. And that wasn't a good idea. It's generally not the Vaishnav etiquette to kick someone. And here he kicks someone who's sleeping. There was one time at Krishna Balaram temple, this one so-called yogi came, and he was rolling on the ground yelling, Jai Radhe, Jai Radhe, Radhe, Radhe. And devotees didn't know what to do. Maybe he was some great mystic in ecstasy. But it was really disturbing, rolling all over the whole temple room in Vrindavan at Krishna Balaram, quite a disturbance. So the devotees went to see Prabhupada and said, what do we do? This guy is rolling. Maybe he's a great saint. Prabhupada gave a simple answer. Kick him. If he's really a great saint, he won't feel it. He's in such ecstasies. And if not, he'll go running away. And Prabhupada knew he was just a sahaja pretending. Prabhupada knew that right away. So devotees went up and kicked him. And what did he do? He scurried away as quickly as he could, because he was just trying for adoration and distinction. But in this case, when Muchi Kunda was kicked, he was also blessed. They went disturbed with burning ashes, and Kalyavana had his funeral rites immediately. And he could go on to whatever his next destination was. So when Muchi Kunda woke up, and the rest of the chapter says how he developed this relation. He understood who Krishna was and offered him the most wonderful, wonderful prayers. And I find the prayers in this chapter very useful on a personal level. How many of you have been in the position, you wake up in the morning, you offer your prayers, and you think, what do I pray for? How do you pray? What are you supposed to pray? I mean, the most common prayer is, I want something. Now, Prabhupada, even if some of you want something, there is a way to pray. And Prabhupada taught us that. When Prabhupada was in his final pastime in Vrindavan, I was there for some of that, and we were all couldn't believe Prabhupada would be leaving, even though medically, by every material calculation, he was leaving. There was no question about it. But we were all so horrified that we would be without Prabhupada. He was our family, he was our father, he was everything to us. And so we said, can we pray to Krishna to keep him? Is that a proper prayer or not? Is that selfish? What if Lord Krishna wants him elsewhere? So, but we want Prabhupada here. We have to pray, but we can't be, Krishna's not our order carrier. We don't ask Krishna, we don't tell Krishna what to do. So how do we pray to connect with Krishna in a way that doesn't make Krishna our order carrier? At the same time, we don't want Prabhupada to leave. So devotees approached Prabhupada. How do we pray? And Prabhupada gave the answer. Brilliant answer. Brilliant, brilliant. He said, this is the prayer. My dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, let Prabhupada stay with us. So the prayer was, if you so desire. So any of us who have some desire, we want our sick relative to be better. We want something, Krishna says there are 4 kinds of people that approach me. They're all pious. Sometimes somebody in need, somebody in material distress, someone curious, or rarely someone who's wise. But they're all considered pious people. But so we should approach Krishna no matter which of the 4 circumstances. But how to approach Krishna? The key that Prabhupada gave, if you so desire. So if you have to make a prayer, oh, my spouse is so sick, will you make her better? And if you just add the words, oh, Krishna, if you so desire, then it recognizes that we're servants of Krishna and we're just expressing our heartfelt concerns, but it's still in relation to devotional service to Krishna. So brilliant, brilliant prayer Prabhupada gave us. To this day, that's still the prayer I use. If I'm praying, oh, Krishna, please protect so-and-so. There's so much distress they're in, if you so desire. So in the rest of this chapter, which is really worth looking at, I think that's for other classes, but Muchi Kunda prays very beautifully. And how does he pray? He says, he talks about Krishna, his qualities, and that's how he prays. And by talking about his qualities, what do? We get to know Krishna. And and by getting to know Krishna, it really allows us to increase our devotion. So Muchi Kunda says, both men and women are bewildered by your illusory energy, unaware they do not worship you. And he goes on describing how people ignore Krishna, but he is the supreme. And he praises Krishna, and he talks about how wonderful he is, how beautiful he is, and how and a beautiful. There's a very interesting line. The body that rides high on fierce elephants or chariots, in other words, the king, adorned with gold and is known by the name king, is later by your invincible power of time called feces, worms, or ashes. Feces, worms, or ashes. And this is referring to the various funeral rites. I mean, we bury people and the body becomes worms. We cremate, it becomes ashes. Feces is an interesting one. Feces is, I believe, referring to the towers of silence. Does anybody know what the towers of silence are? Anybody know? You can say.
So that is the crematorium for the Zoroastrians.
Speak a little louder.
Is the crematorium for the Zoroastrians?
Yes. And what does the crematorium look like for the Zoroastrians?
So it's like an open, it's a high tower which is open for vultures to come. So they'll leave the dead there, and the vultures come and then they will clear the dead bodies. And then the Prabhupada is telling it will turn into the stool of the vultures.
Yes. And in Bombay, not far from Juhu, they have these towers where the Zoroastrian community. And the towers were formerly the tallest building, and they'd put the corpses on top and let the vultures eat them. That was their funeral rite. So it turns to feces for the vultures. So it's referring to. Unfortunately, they deforested the area and lost the vultures, and they built some high rises overlooking these towers. So they put the corpses there, and these high rises out the windows can see the corpses. And there weren't enough vultures around to eat it. So they have a little problem. So the theme towards the end here is very well given by a song. It's a song from, I think, from 1958. So I'm going to play a little piece of it, you. And this is what is being said in the rest of this chapter, how to know Krishna. And Muchi Kunda is describing him, and then we start loving him. So I will get this song queued up. Just one moment. Minor technical thing here. It was working earlier. Let's see what. Okay, it's going to work in a moment.
No, no.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Here we go.
To see him smile makes my life worthwhile. To know him is to love him, and I do. I'll be good to him. I'll bring love to him. Everyone says there'll come a day when I'll walk alongside of him. Yes, just to know him is to love him, and I do.
Okay, so that song was to know him is to love him. And I thought, being Valentine's Day, it would be nice to have a little appropriate entertainment. And any of you have heard of this song before? Okay, it's actually a very pretty song. I wanted to play it with the lyrics, but somehow the wrong version popped up. So to know him is to love him. Of course, they're talking about their partner and they're making Valentines, but and that is the philosophical principle we're dealing with. You don't love someone you don't know. You just don't. You need to know someone to love them. So many religions talk about love of God, but they talk about who God is. This is what Muchi Kunda does. He starts praising the Lord by his qualities, his activities, his appearance. He knows him. And because he knows him, he can express this tremendous love. And then he gets the blessings. And the blessings he gets are wander this earth at will with your mind fixed on me. May you always possess this unfailing devotion for me, because you are following the principles of a Kshatriya. You kill living beings while hunting and performing other duties. You must vanquish the sins thus occurred by carefully executing penances while surrendering to me. O king, in your next life, you'll be an excellent Brahmana, the great well-wisher. So he gets the blessings of Krishna in this way. So to recap what's going on here is first, Muchi Kunda. Oh, I was sharing my email. I didn't mean to do that, but you could hear the song, right? Okay, that's what counts. The key is that Kartikeya could not catch Krishna because Krishna didn't want to be caught. Muchi Kunda gave him a very quick funeral rites, as quickly as could be. And then Muchi Kunda praises Lord Krishna for who he is, and Krishna blesses him to wander. And because of a Kshatriya, there are certain sins occurred. Now, as a Kshatriya, they sometimes must hunt and they must kill people, and it's their duty. But at the same time, they have to do some penance. It's not, when you kill somebody, it's not that, oh, that's okay. There's a penance associated with it. There was a biblical story where I think it was Moses' brother was told to conquer this town. I can never figure out this story, but here's how it goes. So he conquered the town and then came back to the encampment. Moses was not allowed to enter the promised land for various reasons. So the encampment was right outside there. And when his brother came back, Moses said, well, did you do it? I killed all the soldiers. What about the women and children? Well, I didn't kill them. You have to go back and kill them. So he went back and killed the women and children. Again, one of these biblical stories doesn't make sense to me. Then when his brother came back to the camp, oh, you can't come back in the camp. You just killed a bunch of women and children. You have to do penance for so long before you can come back in the camp. So that theme is there, that sometimes Kshatriyas, they do things they shouldn't really do, and then they have to have some penance. Nowadays, modern military doesn't do that. If they did that, they would actually be much better off. So now, Muchi Kunda then, in the next chapter, something interesting happens with him. When he leaves the cave, he notices that everybody looks a little smaller. And trees are smaller, people are smaller, things are different. Can anybody think of a modern story like that?
Gulliver's Travels.
Gulliver's Travels. Yes. In Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, a satire, he woke up at one time, he was in the land of giants, other times land of little people, and he was very big. And they wrestled him to the ground and tied him up too, but that's a whole other story. And he noticed that it's Kali Yuga, and he didn't like it being Kali Yuga. So then he went off to meditate and go to the mountains and all. And we may wonder what is the reality of these stories? Well, we can actually see it. If you go to the American Museum of Natural History in the Upper West Side of New York, you'll see these gigantic reptiles. Yeah. There's huge amounts of reptiles there. And they're giant, these giant Tyrannosaurus rex and other Brontosaurus, giant reptiles. And today we can see, at least I live in Florida, many reptiles. In New York, you'll see little lizards. Here we have, actually in Florida, every lake has alligators in it. In South Florida, they actually have crocodiles in it. And, they're smaller. Their bodily structures, their how their jaws and other features are organized are very similar anatomically to what you'll see at the Museum of Natural History, just smaller. So we can see the size of creatures can change over time. Even in Florida, nearby me, there's tar pits you can dig in, like the Brea tar pits in California. And you can dig up these very large elephants, mastodons, huge, much bigger than current elephants, that lived only 10,000 years ago. And saber-toothed tigers don't exist, these gigantic tigers with huge teeth, like a foot-long tooth sticking out. And so this is, you can find such creatures. So as time goes on, the size of creatures can change. We can see it in our own fossil evidence. And here Muchi Kunda woke up, and when he did, everything had changed. And then there's a time factor. Muchi Kunda obviously lived a very long life, and he was with the demigods. So time for the demigods is different than time for us. It depends on which demigod it is. But one day of theirs might be a year of ours. One day of Brahma's is 4.5 billion years. It depends on which demigod it is. This idea that time is not consistent around the universe. Can anybody think of a scientist who came up with that concept, that time is not the same wherever you are?
Einstein's theory of relativity.
Absolutely. And it's actually been proven. They've taken an atomic watch, which is these watches that are, the mechanism is a crystal that has a certain frequency. And these watches are the most accurate there are on the planet. And so you have a watch sitting on Earth, and you put a watch on an astronaut that's in the International Space Station. And when he comes back a year later, he's been moving so fast that the watches are not synchronized. It's not off by a lot. It might be 1/10 of a second, but the watches show a difference in time. So we know from modern science that what Lord Krishna is discussing in the Bhagavatam, that time is relative, is a fact. And sometimes when we read the 5th canto, which is something, I'm with the Bhaktivedanta Institute, something we're studying in great depth, especially because we're helping design the museum for the TOVP planetarium. And in the 5th canto, some of the bewilderment that devotees have in the 5th canto is because things are being looked at differently. I'll give you an example how things look differently from a demigod's point of view, and Muchi Kunda was seeing things differently. Let us say you wanted to look at the Earth while standing on the moon. Now, what would you see? Well, if you have your ordinary eyes, you only see a very narrow part of the electromagnetic spectrum, the visible light part. So you see the size of the planet is the size that you see in the visible light. But if you were on the moon and looking at the Earth, and you were a certain kind of moth, they can see infrared. So the planet would look much larger because the light they're seeing would show the infrared, which goes out much further than it makes the planet look much larger. Or the ultraviolet. Some animals can see ultraviolet. Well, demigods might be able to see a very large range, maybe even X-rays and gamma rays. Who knows? We know on Earth that some eyes can see a lot more than our eyes can see, various animals and creatures. And we know that the demigods have potency beyond ours, so we would expect they would see things different. So things are going to look differently. They're going to look larger. They're going to look quite a bit different than it looks like to us. So some of what you're seeing in the 5th canto is the way the demigods would see the Earth. Time is relative. Size becomes somewhat relative. And Muchi Kunda woke up. He certainly had a different vision. He was coming from the demigod world, so he saw things differently, and he didn't like it. Because Kali Yuga was not a place that he particularly wanted to be in, so he took off with the blessings of Krishna. With that, there are 10 minutes left, and I was told to stop for questions, comments, or any other good Valentine Day wishes. Today is known as a day of love. Well, there really is love in this world. Sometimes we say there's not, but there really is love. And Prabhupada gave the example, the closest thing to spiritual love, for example, is a mother for the child, where it's just selfless. The mother will give up their own life to protect the child. And so the love we experience in our relationships with each other can be go one of two ways. It can go the ways where it's for our own gratification. And as long as you're scratching my back, I'll scratch yours. Or it can be the love where you're a spark of Krishna and I want to serve you. And it's that kind of love that's the lasting love. And that kind of love teaches us ultimately how to love the Supreme Lord. So there's nothing wrong on Valentine's Day if you have a partner, a friend, that doesn't have, whoever, that you in some way show them a little bit of extra love and kindness. And by doing that, that actually helps you develop your relationship with Krishna. So don't be shy to be loving. Some people ask me this one question, then I'll stop. Well, you were with Prabhupada and you had, particular amount of time per one-on-one with him. What's it like being with him? And I've been asked that question a lot more in the last year than I've ever been asked. So I had to think deeply. What was it like being with Prabhupada? Well, he was very loving. Truly so. He was funny, but we didn't get it because, age difference, generational and cultural differences. A lot of things said were so funny, but I get it now. I didn't really get it then. But he had a sense of humor. He was relaxed, but also he cared about us. He really, really cared. There's one minor story I'll tell just to put it in context. Achyutananda was the first devotee to go to India. He was dodging the draft. Prabhupada said, go to India. There weren't any devotees in India, and Prabhupada was on the way to India. Told Achyutananda, you can stay with some of my god brothers will give you some shelter. And so shortly after he got to India, Prabhupada was there. So Prabhupada takes Achyutananda, teaching him how to use a lota, how to wear a kopin, the things that are necessary in India. You don't have washing machines and all of that. And then Prabhupada says to him, and this is our squatting toilet. And then Prabhupada at that point had no money. It was very, very beginning of things. And Prabhupada says to him, but if you find this toilet is too uncomfortable for you because you're used to it, I'll buy you a sitting toilet, a Western toilet. That was Prabhupada. And that says that is how he dealt. It's very loving. He could, because the face is a mirror of the mind, he could know, as we say Christmas time, if we've been naughty or if we've been nice, and Prabhupada would respond to us according to if we were naughty or if we were nice. So sometimes he could be heavy and sometimes light, but either way, he was always loving. And even when he would get angry, it was for our benefit because that anger would dissipate. If I get angry at someone, I got to go through my 12-step anger management program to get over it. Prabhupada, a minute later, he's done with it. Okay, Damodar Priya.
Hare Krishna, Brahmatirtha Prabhu. You actually sort of answered my question with that story. I was going to ask today for the Bhagavad Gita. I read every morning, and I happened to read a verse 214, which is the same as today's date, about matra sparshas to kaunteya, about the permanent, non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress. And my questions that I had written down were, how can I be compassionate but not overwhelmed by the pain and suffering of others or myself? How do I tolerate without becoming cold and hard-hearted? So in that theme of kind of love and compassion, like how to understand that verse, but in a practical way. Thank you.
If you go to the cancer ward at any hospital, you'll find there are two categories of nurses. Those that lost their compassion because they're dealing with the sickest people day after day, and they're cold and very matter of fact. And you'll find others that never lose their compassion. Which do you want to be? So, and That's the question. So we never want to lose our compassion. At the same time, we always must understand that we are not the controller. Everyone has their karma, and sometimes they have to go through certain things. So our business and our duty is to be kind and compassionate, but we can't change someone's karma. They may have to go through certain things. We may be able, if they're open, give them a context like that. But we should never become cold-hearted. That is not very useful for our devotional life. When Prabhupada would see people suffering, he was very sad about it. Very sad to see it. At the same time, he wasn't sentimental. He understood what was going on. We do what we can do, but we go on with our service. So it's taking the middle road, not to be, oh, everyone's suffering. Now I'm frozen. I can't do anything. There's too much suffering. Or the other side is to ignore that suffering. We must be very Buddhist-like and take the middle road. And Krishna says that in the Gita. He says, don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little, don't eat too much, don't eat too little. Krishna takes a very middle road approach in the Gita. And that's what we have to do. Both keep our compassion, but not be overwhelmed by it. I hope that answers your question. It's not what I'm saying is simple, but it's not necessarily easy. And that's something we develop with a devotional maturity. Somebody asked, does anybody know what Prabhupada's relation with his own children was like? Yes, I know. Okay, so I answered that question. The question was, not what was relationship, does anyone know? And the answer is yes, I know. Okay, that's my wise guy answer. Okay. We'll rephrase that question. What was the relation? Depends on what the child was like. For one child, Vrindavan was very close, and Prabhupada set him up with a business to sell Prabhupada's books because economically he had failed in life. Another child of Prabhupada's had a mental illness, and Prabhupada, this is back in the 30s, sent him to see a psychiatrist. Psychiatry then was very primitive. But Prabhupada understood that we had a mental illness. We can't deal with it. You know, so I don't know which mental illness it was. So Prabhupada sent him to see a psychiatrist. And eventually the child just disappeared. Another son of Prabhupada became the enemy of ISKCON. He sued ISKCON in the 80s, and he said, I am the son of Bhaktivedanta Swami, and therefore all of his property is mine, and I'm suing in the court in Bombay for all the ISKCON property because I'm the heir. And there was a trial, and it went on for a long time. And that's when Narayan Maharaj was a very good friend of ISKCON at that time. And he would take the train to Bombay regularly to testify in this trial that went on. Of course, ISKCON won the trial and the son lost. So Prabhupada reciprocated with each of his children according to how they would have best reciprocate with him. And those that, for his former wife, he set up a trust fund to take care of her. He, of course, was poor the last decade of his life, last decade as a grahasta and as a vanaprast. But when he had some money, immediately he put a trust for her. He personally didn't administer it, had others because it was former wife, but to take care of her needs. So Prabhupada dealt with each of them as was appropriate. I hope that answers the question. Is there any other last question, comment, or Valentine's Day wishes? Anybody else have anything else?
Jeffrey Eckler asks in the chat, will Krishna Krishnadaya, will Krishna prioritize the devotee's desire over his desire? How does that work?
Well, Krishna will, if we really have a strong desire, Krishna will purify our desire. If we really are attached to devotional service, we have our desires, but our desires mean nothing. My hand means nothing when it's independent of the body, is Prabhupada's famous example. If I take my hand and I'm squishing food with it, it doesn't do any good for the body. When I take the food and I feed myself with it in the mouth, then the whole body, including the hand, benefits. That's the philosophical point that Prabhupada makes with this brilliant metaphor. So if we really want to be satisfied, it's going to be in relation to Krishna. So if we're very sincere and we have other attachments, Krishna may take them away. And if we use everything in Krishna's service, then it's all perfect. So that's the idea. Now, what I'm saying is theoretically very simple. This is not easy. Don't even think what I'm saying is just because it's simple, it's easy. That's what we work so hard for in devotional service. Really work hard at this. And all of you, we have to work hard. We have certain sadhanas, we have certain vratas. I just came back from India. I don't remember if I asked this class or not. We'll ask one question. I visited the largest deity in the world. Where was I? Anybody know? Largest deity in the world I visited. Where was I? Somebody.
Starts with G. Who wants to say it?
Where?
It starts with G.
Govardhan.
Where?
Govardhan.
Govardhan, yes. I was with the Lord. I gave a class in India, about 60 Bhakti Shastri students. I told them, I can't begin the class till you tell me where I was. Took them 7 minutes. But that was good because I wanted to get the frontal cortex full of blood before class. So people aren't just sitting there, just, whatever I say goes in. I want them to be thinking. I don't tell people in class what to think. I just want them to think. That's the goal. So I wanted to get full blood in the frontal cortex. Took them 7 minutes for someone to guess it. They went around the world. I didn't begin with that I was in India either. I just said I was just visiting the Lord. So when I was at that temple, I was at a Govardhan retreat for a week with Satchidananda Swami and Borijan. And I worked really hard. The service I do for the BI. The service I do for the BI is very intense, and I need a spiritual recharge. And Prabhupada said, go to India for that recharge. So I went to Govardhan, and my first day there, I'm thinking, I'm a geologist. What kind of rocks are these made of? Well, looks like a metamorphic quartzite, I think. And by the end of the week, by the mercy of Satchidananda Swami and Borijan, and Radhanath Swami was there, I was realizing I'm sitting at the feet of the largest deity in the world. It was transformational. And then I said, okay, now I have to do a vrata to get myself spiritually better situated, because we can be so busy, we forget why we're here. So I made a vrata that at 5:30 at night every day, I turn off my weapon of mass distraction. So we have to balance our life that way. I was out of balance, and going to Govardhan gave me an opportunity to balance. So these are things we all just need to do so that our relationship with Krishna gets deeper and we don't start trying to treat Krishna as our order carrier. With that, I'll stop here. It's wonderful to be back at the Bhakti Center. One day I'll actually make it in person, but who knows when. Everyone have a blessed Valentine's Day. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Brahmatirtha Prabhu. On behalf of the morning class Sangha, we love you. Thank you. Okay. Shri Shirada and Muladhara are the cutest deities in the world. Shigar Chandra. Jai. Temple room. Okay. All right. Welcome to the Afterglow. Would anyone like to say anything in glorification of Krishna? In glorification of Krishna's devotees? Right. Okay. Have a wonderful day. Happy Valentine. Go to your deities and give them flowers. Valentine. Hare Krishna.